watched a couple of videos by someone I haven't seen before. It was called something like Anarchatinvader. That's not right. Something like that anyway. The beginning bit sounds like Anarkin from Star Wars and it ends with a kind of Vedic ending. But I'll put links to it. But these videos were called something like Men Hating Feminists 1 and Men Hating Feminists 2. When I first saw the title, I thought it was about men who hate feminists. And then I realised, because it was hyphenated, it was about feminists who are men haters. Although by the time I got to the end of it, I thought I was probably right the first time. Interesting. It was comparing the feminist movement to the trade union movement, his experience in the trade union movement, and what role angry radicals play in both those organisations, if that's the right word, not organisation, or movements, that kind of thing, sections of society. And with the trade union movement, of course, which he seems to have a lot of experience with, as he rightly pointed out, angry radicals are very, very useful at times, but you wouldn't want them as leaders of an organisation, perhaps, is what he suggested, and you wouldn't want them as spokespersons to any kind of media, for a variety of reasons. I mean, I kind of know what you mean if you ever watched this video, by the way. Although it is a bit irritating that kind of functionalist approach to what an organisation is, that you just bring out the shock troops when you need to get things done, and then kind of deny their value when there's more politicking to be had. Yeah, it doesn't sit very comfortably with me, that, to be honest with you, whether it's applied to trades unionism or anywhere else. There's a lot of people suffer as a result of that. Because quite frankly, the trade union movement wouldn't be where it is today if there wasn't, the Tolpuddle martyrs, and if there wasn't, the people who did the things that, well, you probably don't know about British trade unionism, but the people who at Wapping and at Grunwick, and these are radical moves by angry, justifiably angry people who've been exploited, and those actions were necessary, really, and to kind of deny them a validity, which I know you're not absolutely doing, but there's a suggestion of that in what you're saying there, and not to try to find ways to keep dialoguing with those people is just wrong, isn't it, really? Let's face it. When everything gets cosy again, you just kind of ignore the people who've done most of the donkey work, really. But anyway, just to return that to feminism, I suppose, really, because it was in two parts. The first part, I may get this in the wrong order actually, but the first part was something about Malcolm X, and maybe it's in the wrong order anyway, but Malcolm X was the analogy, and about how it's always best to, when you're in any kind of an organisation like that, any kind of a movement, social movement, feminism, civil rights, trade unionism, you can only do the confrontation thing for so long. At a certain point you have to try to make allies, and the allies you're making are with those who might at first glance at least seem to be in the opposing camp. So as a trade unionist, at a certain point you have to talk to the people who own the means of production. You can't just let the communists, the radical communists, say we want to bring down capitalism. At a certain point you have to get into negotiations with the bosses. Civil rights movement, it's no good just saying, whitey's bad. At a certain point, you have to sit down and talk to the white guys. And your claim is that in feminism, it's only so, it's all very well saying men are bastards, but at a certain point, you're going to have to sit down with them anyway, so you better find some people who can talk the talk and be a bit more diplomatic and negotiate. Which is kind of true, but only partially true, I think, and only true at a certain moment in history, and it assumes a kind of power of rationalism that I'm not sure it really exists. And the example you give there, which is Malcolm X, Malcolm X is approached by a well-meaning female student, white female student, I think it was New Hampshire College, something like that, and said, what can we do to help the trade union, what can we do as white people to help the civil rights movement? And he said, nothing. And she turned around and ran away screaming or crying or something. Crying. She left crying and got a taxi off, which is interesting that she was able to afford a taxi, but that's fine. And he's been criticised for that, and you suggest that I think he may have regretted that in later life. But I think there's some interesting analogies to draw there. I mean, firstly, I don't know for a fact, but I suspect if you'd have sat down with Malcolm X at that point and said, "Are you sure there's nothing we can't do?" he would have probably said, "Well, yeah, you can stop dressing up in sheets and hanging people. That would be good. Black people, that'd be nice. You can stop making us sit in the backseat of buses. You can stop making us our separate drinking fountains. You know, you can stop discriminating against us." So it's not so much, maybe that one well-meaning white female student couldn't do an awful lot, but there's a lot of other things that could be done, and they're mostly just stop being horrible, you know. If I could draw a different analogy, and this analogy might not hold much water, but I'll give it a go anyway. You know, at the moment, and I'm sure you're aware, there's quite a huge disparity between wealth and earnings in the West and wealth and earnings in non-Western countries. So a lot of the goods that we enjoy in the West are made in sweatshops in the Far East and in other places, often by child labour. And it's all very well, you know, we could go over there and say, "Look, 9-year-old boy sewing Nike sneakers, what can I do to improve your conditions?" You could say nothing. You know, I think he'd be justified, quite frankly, in saying nothing. But he could just say, you know, if you thought about it, he'd probably say, "Well, stop buying bloody Nike sneakers for a kick-off. Stop supporting a system that supports that allows this to take place." Actually, he's a very articulate 9-year-old guy. This isn't, you know what I mean? You know, stop patronising sporting events in which Nike products are featured. Stop shopping in shops that feature Nike goods. Stop participating in a society which thinks this is okay. You know, there are things which can be done, but they're mostly to do with changing bloody lifestyle. Stop participating. Or he could have been stroppy about it, and I think, you know, if I'd have been a 9-year-old lad brought up in that situation, or perhaps a little bit of an older, a man perhaps who spent most of his life in a sweatshop and was now watching his kids come through the sweatshop process, and I'd have been asked that question: what can we do? What can we as well-meaning Western liberals in our Nike sneakers, what can we do to help your situation? I think I'd been more inclined to respond as the alien responded in that film Independence Day. You know the scene as the president goes down to the glass booth where the alien has just come to consciousness and killed a lot of laboratory assistants, and the president says, "Can we live together? Can there be peace?" "No peace," the alien says. "What can we do?" the president says, and the alien just says, "Die." You know, I think if I was an angry sweatshop labourer watching my kids come through sweatshop labour, and someone said, "What can we do in the West to help?" I think I'd probably say die, actually, and I think I could understand that. Anyhow, that's just that part of it, really. I mean, the other thing, which I think this is in the second video of those two, Men Hating Feminists 2, was to do with the necessity of making allies in the opposing camp. In other words, in that particular case, women, feminists, the necessity of those feminists to make allies in amongst men. I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't think it's necessary at all, really, actually. As he rightly pointed out, 50% of the world's population is female. I'm not sure how many allies they need, really. No, they need to be organised. There's all kind of movements to do. But I don't think any woman really needs me to help her. They might need me to get out the fucking way. I don't know. Stop buying porn, or stop, I don't know, whatever it is, you know what I mean? I don't know the arguments well enough, but you know what I mean? There might be the equivalent of nothing, might make a lot of sense. The equivalent of die might make a lot of sense. But I don't think they need help. And I certainly don't think they need help because of the reason you give. I thought this reason was a bit troubling, actually. Because you basically went on to say, you know, you're going to need to make allies because, you didn't use this term, but in the battle of the sexes, men are bigger and stronger and more violent. We have bigger, stronger, more violent bodies and bigger, stronger, more violent minds. I mean, you almost said those words. Wow, I mean, that's a really problematic thing to say, I think. You know, is that how any of us sees the outcome? You know, that men on one side of the field and women on the other, and we just go at it with clubs and cudgels and maces and guns. Is that how it's going to work? No, It ain't going to work like that, you know, quite frankly. And to the extent that I'm a feminist, and I would never use that term about myself, but to the extent that I do that, I do it partly for reasons of enlightened self-interest. I'm not going to deny that for 1 second. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm not giving up anything to live in a world in which women have more access to resources and better representation and all those kind of things. Because there's things I get out of it. You know, I'm not making any bones about that. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be brought up in a relatively liberated society, which means that I actually saw my kids grow up, you know, and I would have fucking hated to have missed that. My dad didn't see me at all. I mean, didn't see me at all because he, for the reasons actually, but you know, that would not have been possible a generation before mine. And you know, whatever you think about kids and that kind of stuff, it's an experience I wouldn't have missed for the world. You know, and just not having to be a macho git, really, I quite like that. And I don't think that's been a privilege that's been available to men forever, really. So that's nice. And it's for those kind of freedoms and rights that I would want to ally myself, not as a helper to the feminist movement, but as a person with complementary interests. Yeah, does that make any? I don't know, it makes any kind of sense. Anyway, so yeah, this battle of the sexes, fuck that, really. No. Keep the language of violence. Like the language of violence isn't a really bad idea right now. You know what I mean? All these videos and all these op-ed pieces in the magazines and papers and online about the use of inflammatory, violent language in politics, and whether it may or may not have been an influence in that shooting in southern Arizona, in Tucson. I mean, what's the point of having those kind of sentiments? And then, when we're talking about men and women, we use the language of violence. You better make friends with us girls, because we are fucking strong and you're fucking not. And you can't run in high heels, so we'll catch you. Yeah, I mean, I'm extending the point a bit, but I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. Yeah, and the other thing about anger, it's getting very long, sorry about that. The other thing about anger is about anger being disparaged as an expressive style. Because, you know, particularly on YouTube, because we're talking about YouTube here, we're not talking about politics. You know, this video, a couple of videos I'm referring to by Anakin Skywalker, whatever, anyway, that guy, you know, these couple of videos I'm talking about, he's really talking about feminists on YouTube. He's really talking about Nuclear Knight and a few other people, you know, we know that. And this is YouTube, this is not party politics, it's not the trade union movement, and there's nothing wrong with being angry here, I don't think. And the fact that angry modes of expression in this level platform, a level playing field, a social media, is disparaged, I think is a bit weird, actually. And the fact that careful, measured language, particularly spoken in a fantastically mellifluous voice like this guy has. If you watch this, your voice is fantastic. If you were homeless, you'd be famous now, because you've got a great voice for radio. But yeah, the idea that, you know, if we can talk in this particularly winning style, in a way that seems calm and measured and rational, and the idea that is necessarily authoritative because it's presented in that way, I just don't buy that, really. It's too easy. It's too easy to trump anger by going for calm and apparent rationality. It's, you know, rationality isn't an argument. A rational presentation is not an argument. It's a presentational style. It's rhetoric, not argumentation. So I have a bit of a problem with that, condemning anger out of hand because it's anger, or condemning angry presentations. Actually, I wasn't going to say about this, but I just want to move on to something else. This is a related topic, but it's about a different couple of videos, which I have to say have really irritated me lately. And these are videos by someone I have every reason to like, actually. And this has Got That Funk. Got That Funk Paul, if you watch this, I got to tell you now, much as I like a lot of your videos, the two videos you've made recently, you made one a few weeks back about Sale Polanyi dying in Boston, and you made one a couple of days ago called Nuclear Waste, again about nuclear night. And when I watched one about Sale Polanyi, I had some misgivings about it. I couldn't figure out what it was, but I guess the more recent one about Iron Myth Per, Nuclear Night, really crystallised for me. And it's to do with this calm, rational, winning presentation. You know, beautiful presentational style. And I thought, why is this troubling me? And I think it's to do with what the purpose of those videos are and how YouTube functions actually, and what a channel is. Because effectively what happens is, and this is really obvious in the nuclear waste video, is that there's this beautiful presentation, very calm, very measured, very understanding, in which the person who's making the video, yourself Paul, got that funk, presents themselves as extremely generous, extremely calm, extremely supportive, but perhaps at the end of their tether. And at the end of their tether, this is how angry they get. They get disappointed, perhaps a little bit frustrated, but not swearing or shouting or displaying any anger, just that kind of slightly sad, slightly as I say, disappointed thing, but presented in this completely calm style. I mean, so calm, in fact, that some of the comments beneath that nuclear waste video certainly commend the style. Comments like, "God, I don't know how you got such patience, Paul," or "You're a more patient man than I am." That kind of style, you know what I mean? But at the same time, basically opening the door to a complete shitstorm of comments. I mean, some of the comments underneath that video, horrible, really horrible, very personal, and just inviting a kind of hate fest. So I'm just thinking, what's going on with that? What is that? And it's not right, that, I don't think. I mean, I don't think it's intentional, perhaps. I shouldn't think so. I can't imagine why it would be intentional. And as I say, I hadn't noticed it myself in the first video you made there, Paul, about Sale Polanyi. But basically, what you're doing there, I think, is you've got this channel which has got these videos on it, which you're in full control of, and you're presenting yourself as this very, very sociable, likeable guy with lots of patience and lots of maturity, because obviously you are a mature guy, not quite as old as I am, but mature by YouTube standards. And but they're opening the door to a hate fest. You know what I mean? So it's like holding a house party, and you stand at the door, with a smile on your face, and you're well dressed, and you greet everybody really warmly and politely, and inside you're handing out the tea and biscuits, but everybody in there is just really getting into the hate. It's like, "I fucking hate that bitch, she's an idiot, she's this, she's that, she's this, she's that," and you're just kind of presiding over this in this really avuncular way, as if it's all fine. And it's not fine, really. I don't think it is fine. I don't think it's fine at all. I think our channels are like our houses. We have total free speech in our house to say what the fuck we like. But we also have control of what other people say in our houses, I think. And if I want to run my house, if I want to give the impression that my house is a house of orderliness, and a house of calm, and a house in which tolerance and reason and care and compassion are, and excitement and passion, of course, and those kind of things are the things to be valued, and then I just let people just talk shit. I mean, I'm just being a hypocrite, aren't I, really? I'm just being a hypocrite. If they want to talk shit, they can do it in their own house. They can make the videos in their own channels. They can, talk bad about it on somebody else's channel, but not on mine. I mean, I personally do that on mine. If anybody starts talking shit in my comments about people, I ask them to delete their comments, and if they don't do it, I delete it. I picked up that actually from two users, neither who are posting right now. A Christian poster called Veritas48. He was alright, but he managed his channel very well, I thought. He just didn't allow people to get into the hate thing in his comments, and was very careful to maintain that. And the other one was pretty great, a vlogger called Symbolic, actually, who used to post really lovely, coherent videos on atheism. He's a great arguer. But again, he hasn't posted for a long time, and he had the same thing, had the same rule, which I learned from, which is, you want to talk shit, do it in your own space, you don't do it on mine. And I think that's what Paul got that funk. I think that's what you're doing with those two videos. Unfortunately, you're just opening the door. And I can't really see the point. I mean, looking back, I mean, the Sale Polanyi video particularly, it had no content, did it? It was just you eating something. There's no actual content. So the only purpose of that video that I can think of now, and as I say, I don't think it had this purpose in mind, but the only purpose I can see in retrospect is to provide a venue for people to come and bitch about someone else, you know what I mean? And similarly with the nuclear waste thing. It's crap really, all that, really crap. So that's that really. So yeah, feminism. The only other, just to return to Anarchin Bacon, no, he wasn't called Anarchin, whoever this other guy was, men hating feminists, these men who hate feminists or something. Just to return to him, I mean, I just got, I suppose slightly more philosophically, I just thought, does it make sense to be a man-hating feminist? Or does it make sense to be a capitalist-hating member of the trades union movement? Does it make sense to be a Nike to be a I don't know, whatever the equivalent would be in terms of sweatshops and Nike? Does it make sense to be a white-hating civil rights leader? Yeah, I think it does. It makes a lot of sense. And it's the difference between the general and the abstract, isn't it? The general and the particular. It makes perfect sense to hate the whole concept of men, I think. And there's certainly some things about the concept of men that I fucking hate too, actually, to be honest. And there's some things about the concept of women that I fucking hate as well. And the concept of bosses that I fucking hate, and indeed the concept of trades unionism that I fucking hate. There's some aspects of all those concepts that I absolutely hate. But you can hate the concept without hating individual people, can't you? I mean, that's not hard. And I'm a man-hating feminist to some respect. As I say, I fucking hate some of the things that have come through the society that I've been brought up in. But, you hate and then get on with it anyway, don't you? Yeah, that's all really. So, what can men do to help you, girls? Die! Die!